Now listen, that's one of the great lies that's believed. But there's another one. Have you guys ever, I can remember as a young Christian, I can remember as I was reading through my Old Testament. You know, I was raised in a Catholic home. I was not exposed to the truth of the Word. And so when I was first saved, I didn't have a church. I was listening to John MacArthur on the radio, and I didn't have anybody mentoring me. I wasn't hooked in somewhere. I mean, as I'm reading through my Bible for the first time, this stuff is new. I read about David numbering the people, and God came in and brought a plague. I read about, one fella reaching out and touching the ark and God striking him down dead, and I was scared. I began to think, this God is not like I thought he was. In fact, I was finding God to be very terrifying. Let me tell you something. There was a day, this struck me too, as a young Christian. There was a day when a prophet, you guys know about this, Isaiah chapter 6, a prophet, very famous prophet, probably the most famous one of all, aside from Jesus Christ, at least Old Testament prophet, Isaiah. This man, he's probably one of the godliest men among the nation of the Hebrews at that time. He comes in to the temple and he beholds the Lord high and lifted up. And I'm telling you, this guy, he saw this. You can be sure he went right to his knees. I mean, he probably covered up. The glory of the Lord, the train of his robe filled that temple, and the doorpost shook, and you got seraphim, and they're shouting back and forth antiphonally, holy, 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 and the place is just in smoke and shaking, and he's saying, woe is me. You know what? You know what he was not doing right at that moment? He was not thinking about the young lady he passed on the way to the temple. He was not lusting over her. He was not thinking about going home and fighting with his wife. You know why? Because when you're confronted by the glory of the Lord, I'll tell you this, one of the lies you buy into when you sin is you buy into the lie that God is not what He is like. You forget who God is. You buy a lie that He is somewhat knocked down, subordinate, substandard, sub-biblical to what He really is in the Scriptures. You know why? It was not just, you know what? He sees this, and the thought in his mind right now is not go gossip and backstab somebody and be bitter over somebody. Because when you see God for who He is, that has a way of burning through all the falsehoods. You see, one of the problems, folks, we buy into a small God. That is a lie we buy into when we sin. I'll tell you what, if the glory of the living Christ hovered at the end of your kitchen the way He did in the temple that day, when you go home tonight, you might not say the things you would otherwise say. You might not do the things you would otherwise do. And I'll tell you what, when Isaiah saw himself, or when he saw God, he saw himself as well. And you see, that's one of the problems in our sin as well. We think way too highly of ourselves. Way too highly. We think our way, we think what we want trumps all. That's true. Every single time you sin, you totally blow off and cast off the Lordship of Jesus Christ. You despise it. You count it as a little thing, and you certainly are exalting yourself. You know pride is behind every sin. You are exalting yourself. You know the lie you believe every time you sin? You believe you're pretty great. You believe your ways, your agenda, your needs trump Christ's commands. Now listen, there may be a lot of other lies that you believe, but you know what? This does help. If you will really, listen, some people come along, Christians will come along, and they'll say, I've tried to fight that sin, and I know they have. The guy's not lying to me. The guy's not trying to deceive me. I know that sin grieves that brother. I know it grieves him. I can see the grief on his face. I know he's prayed over that sin. I know he's struggled over that sin. I know he's repented of that sin and he's been sincere. But then he's why do I keep going back to it? And you know what? It's because even though he may not like that sin, and even though he may be trying to fight it, he has never yet gotten to the root of the matter. He has never really gone after the lie that he believes every time he commits that sin. It will really help you. It'll help me. It'll help us if we come to grips with identify the sin and then figure out what am I believing every time I give in to that? Because there is a thought process. We don't sin in a vacuum. There is thinking. We weigh things out. We do things. There's a perception. We size things up. We look at things from a standpoint of what is desirable. Remember, desires are in this thing, folks. We have to figure out, how is it that those desires, how is it that sin is deceiving me? What lie am I buying into? And I'll tell you this, once you identify the lie, how do you battle sin? How do you battle corrupt desires? I'll tell you, if they're both deceitful, your weapon to kill these things is truth. If lies and deception are at the root, truth. You've got to come to the place where you have a handle, you have a grip on what is true.